mockery of God, in Jesus. So it begs the question, what's going on? A lot of people don't look at this stuff and say, well, if this government is supposed to be put here by God, why are they, blaspheming or, trying to destroy the image of God? And, you look at the FCC and they allow, the government, they allow Hollywood to basically promote Satan, in movies. They promote him all the time. You look at Fox, they got a new show coming out called Lucifer. CBS got a show called Angel from Hell. But when you look on the money, it says, "In God we trust." What God? What God? I mean, you let all these things happen that go against the Bible and go against God, but the money says, "In God we trust." This is supposed to be a government instrument. It says, "In God we trust." What God? Their God, because they are God. And that is what you have to understand is taking place here. They know, bottom line. When you look at who is taking the role of the God in the Bible on this earth and, the real world, it is them. It is basically them. So when we start looking at the role that the government plays and comparing it to the role that God plays in the Bible, we can see that the government has basically taken the role of God in the Bible. So you start doing the comparison. God, he gives us laws and rules. The government gives us laws and rules as well. God wants us to be obedient. The government wants us to be obedient. God sends people into battle. He sends them into war to conquer lands that he say is evil. Our government sends troops, sends our soldiers into countries to fight against this whole war on terror against people they say are evil. So we have to examine this. We have to ask these questions like, when you start looking in the Bible, you see that, God destroys a lot of things. He sends angels to Sodom and Gomorrah. He eventually destroys Sodom and Gomorrah. He destroys the whole world except for, Noah and his family. God kills a lot of people, or he sends angels to kill a lot of people in the Bible. So, when you read Deuteronomy 20, when God is basically saying to the Israelites that I've given you this land as an inheritance, all you have to do is kill everybody here, leave nobody alive, and the land is yours. So that's like me bragging about all the money I have. Then I take you to a car dealership and say, hey, that car is yours. All you got to do is kill everybody in here. You would basically say that, once you use that money that you got to buy the car. So when we read these verses in the Bible, when we see what it's saying, a lot of people don't put two and two together and see that, something is wrong. Something doesn't add up when God can just go down there or send angels down there to take the land from the people peacefully. So when you read the Bible, the whole thing is he's supposed to want us all to be Christians, or not to be Christians, I shouldn't say that, to be obedient, or to eventually, end up in heaven. So, why would God create these people if God's supposed to be the creator? Why would he create these people to have them destroy, a week later or days later? It could have been babies in that town that was just born, 2 days later. Why would God create them if he knew he was going to send the Israelites there to just wipe them out? So, things to think about. Same thing with the government. We are told that these people are supposed to be evil. And instead of some kind of diplomatic solution, we bomb places. And we just accept it in the Bible, and we accept it in real life. So we have to start looking at things, and people always say that the government is getting too big. And we have to really zoom in on everything that the Bible tells us that God gave us dominion over. And we'll see that the government has slowly taken that away from us. In Genesis, God gives man dominion over the animals, over the air, stuff like that. We can see that the government is coming in there and regulating these things. The government is saying that, well, you can't touch these animals, or you can't hunt these animals, you can't do this. Well, you can't collect rainwater. What the hell is that? You can't collect rainwater. I mean, it's crazy. Pay attention to the laws that are being passed that's taking away the freedom from the people. Freedoms that the Bible says God has given us. Everything is being taken away. The government controls our education, controls our food, controls us. And we are supposed to be free people in this free country when we don't realize that we are being controlled by a government who has managed to make us think that we are free, and we really not. I mean, what is freedom? What is freedom really? I mean, if you are in a system where you have to follow a rule, or you have to follow a law that is not something, simple as, don't kill and don't steal, then you basically not free. You are at the mercy of the powers that be, because as soon as you break that law, they will be the ones who come in and stop you and put you in your place. And this is basically what has taken place. Now, and it's hard for people to see because they separate the two. They separate church, they separate government, and they see the government as being this thing that was here, that was created by us to basically govern us. But then they look to the Bible and they see that, well, God basically did the same thing and gave us these rules that we are supposed to follow morally, and that we are supposed to, obey because, we want to be good people, we want to get into heaven. And then you have to realize that that same book is saying that we are subject to the jurisdiction of the government, or subject to the government. And it's where how religious people complain a lot about the government. They complain about things that the government do, when the Bible is clearly saying that the powers that be, have been ordained by God. Now, you can read that, and some people can say that, well, maybe the Bible was referring to the government structure, way back then, during the time of Christ. Or maybe the Bible was speaking to, the Hebrews. A lot of those verses are in Hebrews, and it's in relation to the Hebrews accepting the rule of the Romans. But when we look at all this stuff, we can't really say that. We got to pertain it to us today, because these laws still exist today. We still follow Ezra. We still follow the Ten Commandments. We still follow a government structure that says that they have been put in power, by God himself. So it should be obvious for people to see that this religion was created to make the perfect docile citizen, to make a person that will be subject to the jurisdiction or subject to the laws of this government. And the religion was created to give validity to the laws of this government structure, to the laws of these people or these authorities who wanted to take control of us. I mean, the book tells you to turn the other cheek, to love your enemy, love your neighbor, and, stuff like that. It tells you to pay taxes, to obey government officials, whether elected or not. Pray for your government. It tells you to do all kinds of things that's highly suspect when you realize that, there's no proof to back up this Bible. So we are basically taking the word of the book. Never does the government come out and say that, well, God put us in charge. I mean, at some point in the beginning, before we was born, they had to have said that. And like I said, once they got the first generation to accept it, everybody else just, rolled into place, and it was born into it. And the Bible also tells you that it will be hard for you to get into heaven if you are rich. It will be easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it will be for a rich person to enter into the kingdom of heaven. So it's basically saying that they don't want you to be rich. I mean, you got to think about that. Poor person is more easy to control because you need hope, you need that religion. So the Bible working on you, for the Bible to work it relies on you to be in poverty and to be poor, which is why, most of the people on the planet is living in poverty, or, is in some kind of poor state. They live in squalor and hovels, and people living in huts, and people all across the world are mostly poor and relying on a god or relying on a government. And this whole structure was set up that way. And the people who have money, as we can see, are in cahoots with the people in power. And this is what we see. We see the actors and the actresses and people who are millionaires all within this whole, 1%, this one structure. And in order for you to get into this point, unless you win a lottery or something like that, you have to be down. You can be rich and have all this money, but as long as you stay to yourself and spend your money and don't try to do anything big, they won't bother you. But as soon as you try to make some noise or do anything that's going to appeal to the masses of people, you have to either join them or they'll get rid of you. And that's basically how it goes. So when you start looking around, you can see this power structure that's really centered around a government structure, because really at the forefront, when you look at it, the government is running all these things. We look at, like I was saying before, the FCC and all of these federally controlled things that deals with, either Hollywood or the music industry or, large quantities of people, like the DMV and, the police force. All this stuff is all falling under a government structure that they control. If you're not with them, then either you're a citizen or you're against them. And as we have seen over history, over time, the bad guy always wins, and they are the bad guy. So you have to realize that, when you step back and you take a look at this whole picture. Now, I've done a lot of videos on, religion. And this is something I wanted to touch on a little bit more, because a lot of people had that question. Like, when you really start to look at it, the government really does, take a lot of power away from the people, and they really do take on that role of God when you start, paying attention and taking a look at the power of God in the Bible and the power of this whole government structure. So now, I want you to take a look at this video, because, Khalid Muhammad basically sums it up, when he's talking about God and, what took place. Take a look.
No mystery God. Absolutely no mystery God. There is no God in the sky, and there is no devil under the ground. Heaven is not in the sky, and hell is not under the ground. Heaven and hell are conditions of the mind, states of existence, and states of being. And so Jesus told us to stop looking for heaven in the sky. He said the kingdom of heaven is within you, and that we are the temples of the living God. That the living God lives in our temple, and he does not inhabit the sky, but he inhabits the higher realms of the heavens, of the realm of the secret innermost chambers of the subconscious chamber of the soul of man and woman. And this power bursts forth and emanates forth from him to set in motion a universal order based on principle and law. All of this set in motion by a divine power and a divine force that never dies. It's constant. It just changes forms. God is in man. Can't be in any man. He's got to be in the original man. Because if God is the first and everything comes from him, then he can't wait for anything else. He brings everything else into existence. There could be no white man if there were no black man. It is biologically and genetically impossible for the recessive white man to produce the dominant yellow baby. Biologically and genetically impossible for the recessive yellow man and woman to produce the dominant brown baby. And biologically and genetically impossible for the recessive brown man and woman to produce the dominant black baby. But that black man and his woman, the father and the mother of it all can produce black, can produce brown, can produce red, can produce yellow. And if the seed runs wild or mutates in the womb of the black woman, can even produce an albino, something which is whiter than white, 180 degrees in either direction.
Now, as I have maintained and always said, the Bible is coded. Now, you can sit back and you can ponder on why would they put the code, or why would they code the book if they didn't want us to get it? You know, why would they give us the book if they didn't want us to understand what's in it? You know, I mean, it's too much to explain. I have a lot of videos on, you know, Christianity and the Bible, as I've said. But when you understand what that book is saying and the code that's in it, you can, it's basically telling you what I'm saying here. I mean, you can put it together. I mean, for anybody who has or who is currently doing research, I mean, you can see from what I'm talking about in this video that this stuff adds up, it matches, and, you know, of course, there's other things that we can pull out of the Bible that fits in other different areas. As I said, the Bible is a book of codes, and it just goes in so many different places, and you can put it with so many different subjects, and, you know, that's by design. But bottom line, this is what the book was created for. Firstly, to get control of the masses of people out there and to get them, you know, sucked into this book. And that's what happened. I mean, look at the way people act when it comes to the Bible and religion. Like, look at the stuff that people do and the stuff they say. So this Bible clearly, the book clearly has a hold on the masses of people around the world. And obedience in God, it's obedience to the government. And that's a fact, whether you want to accept it or not. This is all about their control and their rule, and we have no choice but to accept it. And I think that a lot of people realize that mentally, and they realize that how futile it is to actually go against this whole big government. A lot of people think it's like impossible. So to cope with it, they just accept it. A lot of people just give in and accept what is basically like, you know, slavery, or basically like, you know, us being hostages in this whole government structure. And unless we wake up and realize that we are really actually hostages under this whole government control that is disguised, you know, by religion and all these laws and rules and stuff that we don't really have to abide by at all. I mean, what is it really? People look at a contract and a piece of paper and think that that somehow binds your soul and everything that you are, you know, to a contract or to a paper. And it's really nothing if we get together and decide that it's nothing. We don't have to accept this government control. We don't have to accept their power. We should expose it every chance we get. And that's the only way we're going to ever be free. Now, this is my video. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next video.